always tell me I have to cut my hair, so I didn't do it. But now that they've given up, I really am gonna do it. Just so everyone knows it's for me. It's not because they told me to.
Well, how long have you had long hair? Roughly.
Probably like 5 years, but I had it about the same length before that. I just go in cycles, like shaving my head.
Yeah.
Let it grow for like 5 years, and then I'll just shave my head again.
I do the
same thing. I don't really do like hair styling,
I'm the same way. I don't grow it as long as you did, but at a certain point, it just pisses me off just having so much hair, and I just have to chop it all off.
I'm done. Honestly, when I watch the videos I made, like I'm constantly touching my beard and my hair.
Yep.
And it's annoying even to myself. I'm like, this is unacceptable. Like, dude, just cut it the fuck off, dude.
Yeah.
So, did you have your other guest on or no?
You're the first guest. My other guest.
Okay.
She rescheduled till next Sunday. She said she had some family things. Becky.
Yeah.
And then,
I'm glad I was able to do it.
Yeah, me too. We're posted up in a Motel 6 right now while we try to get going in Oregon, and we got tweakers. And the other one, we had tweakers doing their thing, the pacing, the little just.
Dude, I'm very familiar with the crack smoke motel circuit scene. Like I've done like months in crack motels, where there's just like they got couches out in the parking lot and like grills, and you're like, oh, these motherfuckers are living it up back here.
Yeah,
but like once a week, the whole SWAT team comes in and does whatever the fuck they do.
It's bad, dude. Like they're just okay. So this guy or girl, whoever was, they're pacing, right? But they weren't just pacing; they were literally like rearranging the room, the entire like. I don't know how long. You could hear stuff scraping, and not only that, but they were in like boots or something, like big old steel-toed boots, so it was just clunking around like
you hear the blinds crinkling over and over, peeking out.
And we would I started getting real mad, so I started banging on the wall, and I started like yelling up there, we're trying to sleep and whatnot, and they would probably get paranoid for a couple minutes, but then like like Andrea was saying, they just fall back into the loop and then just start, okay, gotta move the sofa 2 inches to the left. Okay, gotta turn the light off then on again. Gotta pace to the window, come back. I know they're not actually thinking, but it's like an empty. It's ridiculous, dude.
Yeah, it's just machine intelligence. They're just running on like algorithms, just stuck on loop, loop.
So at 2 a.m., was it 2 a.m? Mm-hmm. 2 a.m. last night, like I was getting ready to go strangle somebody. So instead of doing that, I went to the office and asked if we could get another room. So we went to this other room, like 3 doors down. But then,
there's just different tweakers.
6 a.m. in the morning, like someone else is moving up there and pacing, and now there's like squeaky. The ceiling is squeaky, whereas the other one wasn't. So it was just like a new variation of. I think half the people, because I went to the office and I was like, "You guys like have a habit of serving meth heads here, or is this standard practice, or what?" And he didn't
say that.
He didn't say anything. He didn't even respond to the question. He's just like, "I can get you a new room."
Yeah. Yeah, any hotel that you can go like straight cash. Like I like Super 8. I feel like Super 8 is like a small step up from Motel 6, but you can still just pay. Like there's still some crackheads and shit because I think it's just like cash. Like I think it's $100 deposit, but you get it back when you leave.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe try Super 8. Might be like a small step up.
I just like Motel 6 because they take the pets for free.
Yeah, we have a little dog. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough traveling with pets.
Yeah. So
I would love to get a pup, but I don't know if I could treat it like right. Like it's just so difficult. A cat is one thing. I have a cat.
Yeah.
But
are you in a
pup is like hard to travel with.
What type of housing situation you got going on?
I live my wife's. I live in a house like way out in the mountains. It's like a 200-year-old cabin. Real rough, but basically it belongs to my wife's family. had lived there for like 20 years, and it was in like disrepair.
Mm-hmm.
And the place we were living, our rent had like got doubled, and we wanted to get out into the nature anyway. So basically, we're living there, and it's kind of like a deal. Like I'm working on the house for them.
Yeah.
So we got it up just to where it's like livable, like patch the roof, patch the floors.
Mm-hmm.
And then just over time, I love it there. Honestly, I never want to leave. I hope we can just stay there if like circumstances work out like that. But basically, I'm living off the good will of others. But I earn my keep though. You know, I'm a carpenter. So
do you work? You work too, or you work like part time, or?
I mean, I do work too. I don't really feel great about the work I do, honestly. Like I've gotten it down to now where I don't work full time anymore. I do kind of like hired gun stuff or like a job I can do alone and work long hours overnight. But I try to work like 2 or 3 days a week, maybe long days, and stay at home and work on the house and my own home projects the rest of the time. But it's always a struggle. Like no boss wants you working 2-3 days a week.
Right.
And no person like me wants to work 6 days a week. So it's hard to find like a compromise.
You've been in construction? That's been your main thing?
Pretty much, yeah, forever. It's just like my adopted father, my uncles are all carpenters. It's kind of just like a family trade.
Yeah.
And I hated it when I was younger because I would be on job sites since I was like 7 years old. Like, move that stuff. I'm like, I can't. It's too heavy. He's like, don't be a fucking pussy. I'm like, okay, Dad. But like as I got older, I'm like, I am grateful that I know a trade, and I can pretty much always find work like wherever I go and as a carpenter. So I am grateful for that. But just the places that you have to work, like I feel like the more aware you get over the years, like your perception of good and evil and like the subtleties of what is evil or what's playing into like this system gets more and more subtle. So it's like I work an honest day. I just get paid for the time I work, and I always break my balls, but it's still like I don't want to work building mental hospitals or fucking abortion clinics or jails or like nursing homes. Like, just as you become more aware, you're like, I don't want any part of this, but that's like almost the only work. It's bizarre. That's like 99% of the available work is money is like captive income to like people that have to pay, like dialysis patients on Medicaid or like people locked up where they take their Social Security. Like, it's weird when you really start to see the whole business world and where like money is available to work for. It ends up being all these like evil entities. And I'm like, Jesus, can't I build like a windmill or like?
Well, it's because all the regular people ran out of money already.
Oh yeah. You're always working for fucking assholes because they're the only ones with money.
Right.
Like, you know? Yeah.
It's totally upside down.
And I'm terrible at business. I can't. I've tried to do it on my own, but it's like every job I go to will be like some little old lady or something, or people and it's like, you know, I'll give them a fair price or something, like, oh, it's going to be $5,000. Like, I mean, material, everything. And I'll be like, but I only have 1,500. And I'm the type, I'll be like, all right, fuck it, I'll do it anyway. Just like lose like $2,000. And like at the end of the job, I'm like, what am I doing? This isn't a business. I'm not good at business.
Yeah, it's like, it's weird. It's weird how how the money funnels in a specific, I guess you could say, morality.
Yes.
It does not funnel in a. You can put adjective like qualifiers on how the money flows, and it flows down.
Mm-hmm.
If like the canals you're talking about, right? It's flowing down canals that say like
Exactly.
Prison, mindless repetition. You could all the sort of qualifiers that go on where money likes to flow is like this stagnant areas. It doesn't flow down creative living. Like money doesn't go flowing down that particular canal. There's like a dam up on that one. Even though like individuals like us who are not, snoozing, or we're not whatever all these other people, creatures who are doing out here. We're not interested in doing that, but on the other side of the coin, the system isn't interested in flowing that thing called money down our canals. So we have to be ridiculously creative just to stay afloat. I know that's how it's been for me, especially since coming out of the thing.
That is our advantage, though, like in all of these areas, whether we're trying to change things or just support ourselves or whatever. I feel like we have to rely heavily, almost solely, just on our creativity and cleverness. Like that's almost like the trade-off we have. Like we don't have any of the material leverage to make the things that we want to happen. Whereas like someone with a lot of resources, if they want to accomplish something, they can just throw money at it, and they can attract a lot of people to help them do it through the resources they have available. And our only advantage is just our pure like creativity, and hopefully we have that like benevolent reality diverse, like kind of on our side. Like we can catch that current if we can stay in that like perspective. I don't know.
It is available, I think. I don't think it's strong here. It's like a weak force. Like the strong force here is the corrupt. That's the strong force. The weak force is what you call the link to the divine. Although the link to the divine is like what runs us, like whatever you feel at your core. If you're a compassionate human being, like your current is the link to the divine, and that link is very tenuous here. It's very fragile, and it's not appreciated by those who are following the sort of beast mind, which has money going around in this weird way. And of course, the money system's fucked anyway. It's retarded. Like ever since whatever it was, 1929, when everything became corporate, or whenever everything became corporate, it became a big joke. Like it's just a joke now. It's not even anything.
Even just, I mean, I try, and even people like my parents are just trying to break through that very base level of, they have this idea like, well, survival of the fittest. It's a competitive world. You got to compete, like eat or be eaten, dog eat dog, all this stuff. Not true. We have plenty. We have way more resources than we need, but we build like bombs and shit that we just dump in the ocean or explode. Like the only way to enforce that scarcity, because we do produce a lot and technology does make us able to produce more. So they just have to take a bigger and bigger chunk and just like explode it in the ocean or in the desert in Africa. Like that's where like 99.9% of our energy is going. Yeah, so this like, funny. It's scarce. There's got to be competition because it's scarce. Like, no, it isn't. That's fake. That's manufactured. There is no scarcity. There's just people that you listen to that you shouldn't. That's all.
It's that's true. Like they have to just like, it's like if you have a bunch of bread and each one loaf per person, and then the head of it is like, all right, we got to throw away 80 loaves here and have the 100 people fight over 20 loaves instead of, and then the loaves are imaginary to boot. So like, it's not even actual bread. It's just like, it's like your bank account. It's just got numbers in there that's supposedly relating to some sort of value of yourself.
Yeah.
But it's not, obviously it has nothing to do with the value of yourself. Anybody who looks into it knows that it's inversely proportional. The good die young, that sort of saying, is a correct saying. Like the people who are good at heart get taken advantage because all these backdrops or whatever, most of them are programmed with narcissistic programming, so they're there to manipulate and to take advantage.
Yeah, that's one thing. This just popped into my head, but like some people kind of give like our reality perspective and the mainstream reality perspective like equal weight. Like, oh, well, maybe we're just seeing things differently. Like they see a completely different reality than like, no, I don't accept that because they're cruel people. They're mean. They're evil. Like, how many times in your life, how many times like in a month do you hear someone say the phrase, bomb them back to the Stone Age? Just like, what? You're a fucking monster. Those are human beings with like an internality, just like you.
Mm-hmm.
They've been locked up inside, like they're scared too.
Right.
Like just to revert, like no, it's not just two different ways of seeing things. It's like a wicked, parasitic perspective versus like a cooperative one system like body perspective. I don't accept that they're like equal, but you know.
I don't think it's equal either. It's not. It's more like a hive mind, and I'm not saying they don't have internality like you're saying. They might have some, but I think it's more of a reflective quality of creator beings because like we can look at anything and animate it via anthropomorphism. We do that anyway. Like we look at a tree and we can see the human characteristics in it. We can touch it and hug it and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
So like I think we project onto these people who don't have much life in them. It's not like, oh, that's just another way of seeing it. It's not even a way of seeing it. It's just a segment of the population that is not aware whatsoever. So the machine mind is running them. And the machine mind is simply corrupt and used as a energy harvesting tool. It's not sitting there and being creative in what it's doing. It has taken all of the creativity in the so-called reals, and it's just using that to basically run itself. It's like a giant mouth. Like we always make fun of the creature called Yaldabaoth. He's supposed to be like the ill-begotten son of Sophia, like this creation is essentially his, and he's just trying to eat. That's all he's trying to do. He doesn't know anything else but that. He just has this incessant hunger in his belly, and he must eat everything. So he's like the Ouroboros, he just keeps chewing his tail till he's not there anymore. And we're inside of him, right? We're inside of this guy who's trying to eat himself.
Yeah, my thing is I go back and forth between thinking that it's like a malevolent, evil, like, I lost her. Oh, am I back? Okay.
Yeah, you're back.
Like a malevolent, evil entity, or just being just purely mechanistic. Because to have this experience, 3D experience, you need to create it first. Like, you can't watch a movie that you never wrote or never shot. Like, that's my opinion, at least, is that reality must be created in advance, like a path that we walk down, or a movie we watch, or at least the game board, the platform for experience must be created at some level. So that has to be like a machine or a technology, and it has to work in a certain way to support itself. The problem is, like, when we identify as the machine instead of the pilot, or when we identify as the chess piece instead of the chess player, like that's
right.
That's where fear comes in, like fear of lack and fear of scarcity, and causes people to act in ways that if they were like using their conscious mind and really making a choice, not out of fear, like they wouldn't harm other people, or they wouldn't steal, they wouldn't hurt people if they were identifying as the pilot rather than the machine,
Right. Yeah, it does not seem to me that it's so difficult, and it also doesn't seem to me that the system itself is malevolent. I think that whatever we are, I feel like I've been here forever. Like, I feel like I have all these experiences that are blocked from my mind, but there isn't anything that appears itself to me here in this realm that I'm like, whoa, that's new, or I've never seen or heard of that. It all seems like same old sort of rigmarole. But then at the other side of that is my own knowledge that it can be a lot different. It doesn't have to be any certain way, and the way that it is unconscious. It's like it's the unconscious. It's not. Look it out on the freeway. You see people just going. It's the same shit. It's never changing. It's always the same thing. Everything's always running out. Like money's running out, time's running out.
Gas is running out.
Gas is running out. Your cell phone battery's running out. Like everything's constantly running out. So, what the rats are supposed to be doing are running around and filling their buckets up. Like the buckets that are given here are full of holes, and we're supposed to be keeping those fuckers full all the time. But they're constantly running out of. It's just pouring out the bottom of the bucket, right? And it runs out just about as fast as we can stuff shit in there. And it's not like fulfilling whatsoever.
It's like a loss system. It's like there's an inherent like loss aspect to this system, where energy or information or however you want to quantify it is always just being siphoned off. There's always less and less and less.
It's entropic. It's an entropic system. Like
that's the perfect word.
And I know, like myself, internally. I'm not entropic. I'm energy source. I know that. Like it doesn't stop. There, like my own energy doesn't stop. But I think we power the simulation or whatever this is. I think the reals, so-called reals, power it. And all of the stuff that's going on around us, like that's your screen, right? Your eyeballs look out onto whatever you're projecting, and it has some 1-to-1 ratio of whatever your essence is, but we have been sort of blocked from knowing exactly, or skewed, like it's skewed. So the desire mechanism that is supposed to help us manifest has been contorted somehow, and it's producing something that's different from what we feel is correct. Not necessarily opposite, because that would be easy to figure out. It's not just giving us the opposite of what we want or need. It's skewed in some weird way, and there's it's the scarcity entropic system where we have energy leaking out of places that we're not even aware of.
Yeah, like there's some kind of filter, some kind of like anti-prism or weird dark refraction, like you're saying, where we send out will, heat, or desires, whatever, but they come back like from a different angle, like not fucking head on the way they should be, like pole to pole.
Right.
One thing I was thinking, like when we were talking about what having such a hard time like supporting ourselves, no matter how hard you work or how honest you are, like you should be able to support yourself, but just the financial difficulties. I used to be a lot more like I'm a victim, like I'm targeted, like these motherfuckers always knew who I was and they just want to fuck my whole life up. But when I think back, like if I did have some of that early success, like, oh, you got an inheritance of all this money, or you went to a big school, you got this job, you had a great idea, like, would I have ever woken up really? Or like, would I have been able to continue like the growing awareness path, or like would that early easy success have almost like sabotaged my whole like spiritual path? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what I'm trying to say here.
I know that is a thing. It is. It's like being
like
born
maybe I couldn't have handled it. You know, like I don't like to say that about myself, but maybe I wouldn't have handled it well. Maybe I would have turned into a huge asshole.
Yeah, exactly. You know? That's very possible. It's like the people that as narcissists. They're constantly they are. I feel like the people who are kind of jerks in the world, they just know that the system is built in a certain way, and they don't care. They know compassion doesn't work as far as like supporting yourself. It just doesn't work. So they don't even try that. They're just like, I must step on my friend or my neighbor Billy's face in order to like succeed and get money. They just know that. So
what what is that like core different? Because I know I go out in the world every day and you meet some people that just click like good. Like even if they work in a bank or somewhere where you might not usually respect like people that work there, but you meet people everywhere that like they look at you and instantly like smile, or like you feel a connection, and they're like just compassionate people. And you meet people everywhere too that you can just like hate you for no reason, like the first time they see you, or you just see them being, they're just mean. They're like no empathy. And it does almost just seem to be like one of the two. Like I always wonder, what is that inherent difference? Like why are you able to treat people like that? Like, don't you know that you're doing that to yourself? Or
I think it's a hard thing to look at, and it's simple to me that we live in a dualistic system, and if you have a person who's heart-based, that means it's you as heart-based, you're like an outpouring of energy to the world, right? That's what you do, that's what you are. You have excess energy, so you want to give it away so you don't like hoard it all. But then
right.
because it's a dualistic world, you also have black hole heart people. So their system, so you have your system, which is giving, and then you have the narcissist, which is pulling. It's a void. They don't feel fulfilled by themselves. So naturally speaking, they have to pull from the ones who are producing energy. And the world pretends that everyone is just good, or whatever we call good. And it's not like that. It's more like you have electrons and whatever, neutrons, positrons,
right.
I don't know what the fuck it's called, but protons and electrons, right? Electrons have negative charge, protons have positive charge. It's like that's the human spectrum, where empathetic, compassionate people are the protons, and the fuck faces that we don't like very much are the electrons, right? But it does have some sort of a balance. But since the world is pretending that everyone's the same, then everyone's always confused. It's like, how come it feels like this person is just always pulling my energy? How come it feels like, and from their side, it's like, how come I don't have enough and these guys seem to always be happy just for no fucking reason?
That's a good point, honestly. I don't think about that enough. Like what's not fair to them. Like why do we feel okay with nothing? Why do we have this energy and like excess like energy to give away to people when they're just like starved, famished? Like I haven't thought enough about that, honestly. It's a good point.
It's interesting because I think every human like wants to do whatever they feel is correct, whatever they feel is morally good. But if you are energetically bankrupt from the start, or even maybe through trauma, maybe you're not just set as one or the other. Maybe some people can't handle the trauma and they invert their energy characteristics, and you turn into an electron on accident or something, and you don't feel like that was your lot in life or something. Because the narcissists, they're not just cruel. It's not that they are only cruel. It's just that they're wired in a certain way that pulls energy naturally, and they have to put on the smile, and like they have to try to copy empaths because that's what the world, it pretends that everyone's the same. So it's like everyone smile, everyone look happy all the time. So they have to basically lie, and the empaths have to sit there and wonder why everyone's trying to pull off of them. And it's just a weird system. It's very strange.
Yeah. Now, do you feel like that? And I also always come back to, there's obviously different types of people, and people I would call, good people and bad people, but how much of that is like the reality canals? Like what if you never had that like profound experience because you just went a different way? Like maybe they never had that experience. Why? I don't know why. And you could say like, well, that's just my soul. Like I would have found it another way. I would have had another experience, but I'm not sure of that. Like I do feel like there is some kind of like this is this is your experience route for this round. Like there's something you need to develop, some trait you need to develop, or some experience you really need to have. And I don't know, maybe you do go through runs as these evil people. Who the fuck knows? Maybe I've been one of those people like many times before, and I don't remember it. And this is like just a last chance. Like, get it right, asshole. Like, you see the buildings coming down. You see, like, fucking, like, this isn't real. Like, stop worrying about the coins.
Yeah.
Stop collecting coins. Like, you know,
I
try and learn something.
It's interesting to think of alternatives to how your life is currently manifesting, because, like, I know George Cavazos has said a couple times, he's like, yep, I've done all the worst possible things. I've been the dictator, I've been the evil ruler, and I've been like the pious one, I've been the saint, I've been the Jesus character. He's like, I know this, I remember doing all these things. Like, we're blinded off from whatever, you know, actual experience our souls have. And I think you can't, like, if you're, say for instance, you're playing a homeless person, right? If the God being needs to experience basically every single possibility at some point. So somehow this God being creature has to know how to be homeless, and he can't remember he's God because he's not going to be homeless. He's going to snap his fingers, and all of a sudden he'll have all kinds of food and shit, right?
Right.
So it's something like that. You're kind of cut off from the idea that you're playing a role rather than, and you're actually that thing. You're not playing a role. It's the way that this is all set up. It's that you can remember that you're divine, that you're you know, everything in some sense. With that full knowledge, you can still be having all kinds of money problems, all kinds of relationship problems.
Sure.
And like, that knowledge doesn't fix anything. It just helps you feel slightly better because you're like, okay, well, this particular role is going to be over at some point.
Yeah. I've had periods where I've, like, just from long isolation, or I don't know what it was, where I feel like I was really able to beat down my ego, where, like, the link was super tenuous between my, like, primary now consciousness and my identity, to the point where, like, where I would wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and I'd be like, I'm this dude again? Why am I always this same fucking dude? Like, why? Like, because you feel like you could be anyone. Like, because when you're, like, in those periods when you're not super attached to your identity, you feel like you could be anyone. You're like, yeah, I could accept being this evil dude or this bum or, like, anyone, a woman or something. Not to freak anyone out, but you know, and you're like, why am I always the same person though? There must be something I'm supposed to get out of this fucking dude. Like, can't be done yet.
Yeah. I think it's a lot of it is about experimenting. Sometimes, you know, we get worried that we're going to somehow break character too much. Like, oh, maybe, you know, if I experiment too much, all of a sudden I'm going to wake up one day and be like, oh, now I'm Adolf Hitler and I don't know how this happened. I was just trying to change one thing in my life, and now, you know, I'm a dictator somehow. It's not, I think we get worried about that, but I think there are very sort of strong tendencies that can't be broken. Even if you wake up and you're like, I want to become rich.
I want to be a dolphin.
I want to be a dolphin. Yeah, sure. Go try it. Like, I think we are like radically free. Most people are scared of the freedom that they have. They don't know that they have it, and they want the belief systems act as the walls of those canals you're talking about. The belief systems are the walls, and they don't want the walls to go away, because then their water is gonna just splish over everything, and then you know, it's gonna be too much. It's gonna be overwhelming. So they need the canal walls, but I think there's enough solidity, I guess, and protective systems in place to where you can wake up and say, I want to be a dolphin, or wake up and say, I want to do something other than I've been doing for the last 20 years without just getting enlightened and having your brain explode into the universe and then come back to some form at some point. I don't think we think in really high polarized ways, especially people who have been traumatized. And we're all traumatized anyway, just coming in. Like, we've talked about it many times, like the birth canal, you get spanked, sometimes the doctor pulls you out by tongs, whatever.
How insane is like medical hospital birth?
Yeah, it's crazy.
So
it's crazy.
Brutal.
Circumcision, like the whole thing traumatizes the infant. Like every aspect of it traumatizes.
Within minutes or hours of a fresh, brand new, pink, helpless baby coming in the world, they penetrate its body with stainless steel syringes like 20 times, and they mutilate its genitals. Like, I don't mean to be so graphic, but like that's your like first 12 hours introduction to reality. Like, that is fucked up, man.
It is. And I think I know that's all for a purpose. It's so, like, you probably know, trauma creates alters. Like, we start compartmentalizing and basically becoming schizophrenic from day one. Like, we come in whole, or supposedly, hopefully, and then we get fragmented. Yeah. Like, when I did my session with Becky the other weekend, she looked into, the source of wherever I'm at. She's like, you have roughly 100 different projections from your light body, and this one called Gary Wormerdam's was one of those. And that they're all supposedly connected at the source of yourself, wherever that's at. But you could imagine that each one of those different realities that's playing out from your core is coming from some sort of trauma that seals off a bit of yourself into some.
Like, that's why you don't have access to those other
because the
memories or experiences or whatever.
They're too painful, so you have pain walls that are keeping fragments of yourself. And so even you can imagine, like, you still feel power, right? Like, you still feel that you have some internal power, some heat source. Just imagine imagine if you weren't split into 100 different ways. Imagine what you could actually do. Like, that's why we're controlled so much, is because we have a lot of power being a fucking 100th fragment or whatever, like, let alone if we were able to integrate all of that and not be siphoned off here and there and everywhere. That's why we're controlled so much.
Yeah. I do. What am I trying to say here? When I really think about what I want, when you go through these iterations of being like super immature, having like low awareness, and you want material things, and then maybe you move past that and you just want to create something great. You don't care about the money. You say, I want to leave like a book or a pyramid or a stone structure. And then you're like, but that's impermanent. That really means nothing in the big scheme of things. So when I really try to drill down, like, what do I want? And it's so hard to like put a fine point on it. But I think the answer that I came to at this point in my life is, I just want experience, more experience. Like, why is our experience so limited? Like, why is this our only mode, like, of experience? Like, why is our body this shape? Like, why am I always the same dude? Like, why is it so restricted? Like, why, like, beyond like any kind of development or accomplishment or anything, like, I just want more, more, period. Like, why can't we have more?
I think you can have more. This place is, number one, is inverted, so it's like the upside down of Stranger Things. It's like this weird gelatinous, oozy substance that we're somehow consciously inside of, where it takes really long to move in anywhere. Like, you can imagine making money is like the substance that we're in. We're in this oozy, sludgy thing called money, and you can't get from point A to point B unless you have this thing called money, and it just works fucking slow, and it doesn't actually respect what you are. So you have to do something that you don't like, for the most part. Most people are doing that for not enough pay to really give you freedom. And then while you're not at your work, you have to do some sort of de-escalation because you didn't like it. So you got to go and imbibe in some beer or some TV or some shitty, some sugary foods or whatever, and it creates a cycle. So it feels really slow, and you're not sitting there imagining what type of creature you'd like to be. You're sitting there thinking about how many hours you have to work tomorrow. You're not like, oh, I'm gonna work on my dolphin, self today. You're not doing that. You're thinking like, where am I gonna get my next dollar? And it just keeps...
I'm gonna develop my dolphin self today. That's fucking great.
Like, but you have to be in a certain state for that thought to come up. You can develop the dolphin self, and then eventually, probably if you do that, circumstance will allow you to go swim with the dolphins, and they'll be like, oh, the whole reason I developed this idea about a dolphin self in the first place was so I could communicate with the actual dolphins. Something like that would come about, and it's not impossible. Nothing is impossible. It's just the sedimentary here is so compacted. Like everything is just like squished down. So every movement takes tons of energy.
I feel like I could accept it more easily if it was consistent, but the strange part or the problem for me is that like very infrequently, like maybe only a handful of times in my life, like something different did happen. Just some like insane chain reaction, like series of the most improbable events that led up to some big like emotional climax, and like you really feel like the universe arranged everything for you for this experience.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like gone, and it's like back to like just the bullshit like for however long, or maybe that's like a me pulling back, because there's also an aspect in those times that's like scary where you're like, whoa, what? I know I said I wanted anything to happen, but now like anything is happening, and it's like fuck, and it's like kind of fucked up. Like,
yeah,
what if I was a different dude tomorrow? Like you're like, why am I always the same dude? And then like you get on the precipice and you're like, holy shit, I don't want to be a different dude. I want to be me.
Yeah.
Like,
we scare ourselves a lot. I think if you imagine the concept of the infinite, it kind of helps you to relax a little bit, because the infinite just means every possibility. It's a very simple concept. People get scared of it, but it just means every possibility. Every possibility that you've already thought of or seen, and every possibility that you've never thought of or seen, or that anybody else has ever thought of or seen. That's what it means. So if we're in a very specific instance here, like we already talked about, it's inverted, it's compacted, it's hard to move here, it's not compassionate, it's kind of ugly, run by retarded money systems, we're isolated, we're not around people that seem to be open, all these things, right? We have qualifiers for this particular experience, and you just say it's some sort of infinite thing, and this is just one like pixel of the infinite experience. So then it helps you just like, it's like, I think the consciousness relaxing allows for you to be able to wake up and say, okay, maybe I'm not a completely different dude, but I'm having a slightly different thought structure today, so now I can like flow a little bit differently, and then it's not so scary to comprehend the possibility.
Another thought that I've had is like, so what if there were no restrictions? What if you were just born into a reality where the turnaround time from your intention to manifestation was like instantaneous, and it was just like planets, stars, there's a river here, I'm a tree now, I'm a Ferris wheel, and but the problem is, so if that was the reality you were born into, if they were the same entities that were being born here, they'd be manifesting just nightmares like all over the place.
Exactly.
Just like
exactly.
Nightmare, and just walking all over each other, crushing each other. Just pain, torture, panic scenarios.
That's what it is, dude. That is what it is. That's what happened.
So maybe there has to be like a preschool, like a filtering, like you're going to stick in here until your intentions are acceptable to like get out.
Exactly. Intentions and reactive properties, part of the problems with manifesting here have been that people are too reactive. And if you go into something where you're manifesting any thought form that appears into your head and you are a reactive individual, you're going to manifest hell. Period. I know that for a fact. Like, I've been
Yep.
down those things before. It sucks.
Me too, man. Me
And
too.
it's like, and
where
because
you're like, people are following me, blah, blah, and it becomes very real, like
Yeah.
very, very real.
yeah, and like this happened to me just with taking weed, and I know I'm a different person than or different type of being than most of the creatures running around here. Like I'm more sensitive and I can manifest sort of things differently, but everything that it's like the negative canted nature of the realm wanted me to manifest pain and torture. Like it was trying to force me, it was trying to force the thought canal down this certain place where it's like, okay, torture, pain, torture, pain, torture, pain, hate your life, die, all these things. Like it wanted that to happen, and it was a conscious superhuman or super effort for me to just simply remain sane and not like not being the reverse Midas, right? Where everything I touch turns to shit or dies or explodes or whatever. Like that's what the reality wants. And it goes back to the whole looshing idea, where these god beings or whatever, they feed off of the negative energy, and how best to feed off the negative energy but to set these divine beings in a system where their feedback mechanism that is required in order to produce something reasonable is skewed in a way that tries to force the negative things to happen so they can feed off the negative emotions that we produce. It's something like that. And it's like a preschool as well, I think, because we've, I know we've been around forever. Like everyone's been around forever. You just forget. You forget the wider picture, right? Like you forget that it doesn't start and doesn't stop. Like you get some moments of reprieve, I guess, but just imagine like you're a volcano or something, or you're the ocean. You're not sitting there having thoughts about what you're gonna do the next day. Like the whole thing is flowing itself, and you're in it, and you can't do anything. Like the ocean can't just rise up and go splish over the land. Like you have maybe sometimes with cyclones or tsunamis or something, but for the most part, that thing is very naturally doing what it does. What we're doing here is something that's sort of atypical, I think. The whole idea of having a like an experience and then like a little person in your head sitting back and like manipulating and organizing what the experience is going to be, that's unusual, I think, in the grand scheme. Like that, it's some sort of a redundancy. It's some strange redundancy that we're experiencing.
The double image of like the aware self and then like the image of yourself,
exactly,
or the avatar or the pure consciousness or whatever.
Just the fact that you can be the viewed and the viewer at the same time, it creates a redundancy that I think that in itself requires energy. Like that's what the masters say. They say simply try to have no thought, or try to simply be in the moment, because when you're in the moment, you're not like here and there and there and then watching, it's making it simpler, and you retain more energy that way. If you can be present, there's not two yous. There's not the body that's sitting here moving and doing stuff, and then the self somewhere off and a couple feet above the head or whatever, wherever that thing's located, trying to like turn the steering wheel in a certain direction.
Yeah. I kind of view it as like that true organic type of consciousness. I think of it as like 3 steps: like observe, identify, choose, make a choice. When you're fully present and aware, you can make these choices, and they're not mechanistic. Like that's the strange thing about people is we're in this machine, like this mechanistic system, but people will make choices that are like contrary to their own machine self-interest sometimes, or at least not beneficial, which like a machine or an animal would never do. It wouldn't make sense to them to take. I can't think of a ton of good examples, but like taking a bum to lunch and hanging out with them for a few hours, like you do it because you chose to do it for some reason, but it doesn't doesn't benefit you materially in any way.
Right.
Or you could choose to like move out into the middle of the desert where you have a good job and a relationship somewhere else, like for no reason, just because you feel like you got to be alone and figure something out. But the time that we're operating in that like actual choice, actual present awareness is for most people and for me is like very small. And most of the time I'm operating in a binary consciousness, which is a set algorithm, and it's just based on the past. Like, I'm done work, I'm gonna relax. Like, you know how you like to relax. You don't have to think about it. It's like an algorithm. Like,
right.
Now I fucking grab a beer. Now I sit on the couch. I turn this thing on, and
exactly.
It's like a program.
Yeah.
Or it's like, I want to party tonight, which I haven't been out in like years. But back in the day, you know how you like to party.
Mm-hmm.
You know who you call, where you like to go, how you like to act and feel, or it's time to go to work. But all these times you're just running you already know how to do that. You're not really present. You're just kind of flipping on the machine. You're like taking a break.
Okay.
And so I think my goal is to like just be in that like actual choosing, like actual organic consciousness, like more and more. I think that's like what my development is. Just relying less on the machine automatic consciousness and more on like the creative, anything could happen, divine spark comes into your decisions, like that real organic consciousness.
Yeah. There's some amount of what you would call surrender that's necessary as well, because the ego it's not just a personal ego. It's as long as there is a redundancy that I already talked about, like the person here watching, like the part of you that's watching the other part of you, as long as that's existing, ego is created from that gap. Like the ego is the gap between those two. So like there's always a possibility for refinement into less and less redundancy. And once, theoretically speaking, you can reduce the redundancy down to zero at some point, and then there isn't any more like I'm making a choice or not. There's just life is doing what it does, and that's not a bad thing. Only the ego thinks that's a bad thing. Like when you say life just doing what it does is bad, you're basically saying, oh well, how the ocean formulates itself upon the sand is that's bad job basically, and I know how to do it better. Like that's what you're doing when you're saying life doing what it does without the sort of a redundancy element called the ego is bad, and it's simply not. It's only bad from that thing's perspective.
Yes, yeah. I don't know why it just popped in my head when you were saying about the beach. I remembered a meme I made a couple years ago. It was like one of these stock images of a guy sitting on the Grand Canyon. He's like, oh, wow. Like, look, and I put a little thought bubble that said, these graphics suck. And I used to think that was a real great meme. But the strange thing about the ego, the identity, and the thing that does make it seem like a trick or an implant or some kind of actual parasitic outside entity is that it feels so real. Obviously, it's real to everyone pretty much on this realm. But even without any metaphysics or spiritual consideration, just logically, it doesn't even hold up. Like, so you're afraid of dying or something, but who dies? Like, what is it? You, like when you were 12? Because that dude, who is that? Like, think back to just your whole persona when you were like a teenage, 12 years old. Like, that person is gone. They really never existed. But even they don't exist now. Or you, like a few years later, it's a totally different person. Like, they're already dead. Like, so who even is this identity that's going to come to an end? Because it never really exists as a fixed thing anyway. It's just like a constantly revolving matrix of data. Like, and it's always changing. Like, so there's no set there's no data set that you can say is going to come to an end. It's just, it's just revolved past, I guess, this mode of experience or something like that. I don't know how to explain it exactly.
It does not have a grounding in spiritual reality. It does not have any zero, and that's when you look into the straw man thing. Even if they made the straw man thing in a way that was not so sort of like just retarded, like it's just stupid. They don't give you an option. They're not like, hey man, we're gonna slap a straw man identity and then we're gonna fill that up with dollars and then you're gonna have to pretend that's you for your entire life. Like, they don't tell you that. Nobody tells you that. Even if you had a system where it more accurately reflected your essence, it's still.
I'm sorry, I'm moving. I gotta get the charger on here.
It still is not anything that you could call yourself. It just isn't. It's not. If I were to try it, it's good that we're talking about this, because this is going to be the topic for our regular group meeting today, which is identity.
Yeah, I remember you said that. So
yeah.
Before we talked, I couldn't think of anything to say, but I'm glad I come up with a couple things related to identity. Yeah.
Yeah, it's identity. We had because some people were sharing. Do you know Anthony? Anthony Din, I think his name.
Is he in your Snail Collective group?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I've been watching your Snail Collective videos, but to be honest, I don't really have like names to faces yet. I don't know which one he is.
Okay, he's the newest member, and he has not yet appeared. I think he's actually coming on today because I believe he gave a thumbs up when I asked who was showing up, but he had a question for you that I wanted to.
Yeah.
He said, would like to know his perspective on free will and his opinion on past life / karma, whether our storylines are meant to be lived out or to be broken. That was his question.
I don't want to appear to be honest, that's the question I'm asking. It's not really like an answer that I have. That's something that I appreciate the question, because that's pretty much like the same question that I would pose to every other thinker that I respect.
Right.
And like I said, I'd say right now, where I land on this right now, like you said, you might have 100 different Garys playing out different storylines. And so maybe it is kind of random. There is like a random number generator aspect where they're like, okay, let's run this soul through all these different personalities. We don't really know which path is going to result in the highest level of development, like of awareness or spirituality or anything. And I was thinking maybe your present awareness kind of just clicks over to whatever the most advanced path is at that point. Like, maybe you could be living one life where you're like working all the time and you're making slow but steady progress in awareness just through like the meditation of manual labor and stuff. You didn't end up as like a high power accountant, so you didn't totally lose your awareness, but you're building slowly, and it looks like in this one run that is going to end up with the highest level of awareness. So maybe you've been riding that lifeline. But maybe something unexpected happens. Like you had a lifeline that was really low in awareness, like you were a drug addict or something. But through some insane improbabilities, you had some experiences that like launched your awareness like way up through like this really improbable confluence of events. Maybe like at the point where your awareness passes, like you would click over onto this other sim or lifeline where the scenarios happen to play out where you gained the highest level of awareness. Maybe that is part of why we see like Mandela effects or shifting realities or small shifts in perspective, is maybe it's us like clicking on to these alternate lifelines. And it seems fucked up. I mean, I'm here. I see what's going on too. Yeah, it doesn't seem like a very benevolent system, but nothing is what it seems. And I've been wrong about what I thought everything was always. So
Yeah.
I like to reserve an ultimate reality canal. And regardless of the machinations or randomizations of the system, ultimately, one way or another, it will result in some kind of advancement or development,
Yeah.
I don't know if that even approached the question.
I think it did. I think
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
I think something to remember is that there are just so many levels. The present mind can't really comprehend them. It can comprehend the form. So like when I say something like there's 100, or if Becky tells me there's 100 versions of you, and this is one of them, my mind can appreciate the form of that thought. But as far as actually like getting in there and say like, okay, I'm going to split myself 100 ways and then experience all those at once, and that will be my ultimate, self wherever somehow. It's not. You can think it. You can't be it unless you're being it. Like maybe from some other level, maybe we have existence as a cell in our own body here, and we think of our Earth. We call it Earth, but Earth is actually this body here from the perspective of a cell. It can only think in terms of that until it's actually that. Like we, as this body composed of a bunch of cells, it's totally fine. Like, yeah, I feel tingles running through. I feel this and that. I have thoughts about how my hands are doing or the other parts of the body. I have thoughts about other people, or i.e. bodies running around and what they're doing. It's not complicated when you're actually at that level, but it's complicated to think about to think about like hopping over levels, because it's so different. It has to be completely different.
I see that as a very valid model and analogy. I loved when you did you're talking about AJ like getting in a fight on the schoolyard, and he saw a UFO like while he was fighting some kid.
Yeah.
And you were like, that was like the big body sending down like white blood cells or something to investigate.
Yeah.
And
Alex.
Yeah, yeah. And it is some kind of, I appreciate that. Like maybe it's just constant leveling up. Like, all this stuff in the Bible about the body of Christ, and all things are made in Christ. It always says in Christ. And people say, well, that's just how they talked back then. I'm like, no, it's not. What are you talking about? There's a huge difference between like they were made through Christ or by Christ or in. Like, don't tell me there's no difference between the words.
Yeah.
Like, but all things are made in Christ. Even that I see as like a cellular, like tall body reference. And maybe that is another way of looking at what we're doing here, like refining our intentions to the point we can like move up the hierarchy to like being a part of the consciousness of the large human body. Or maybe moving up to be like the consciousness of the planet body. Or maybe you can descend down to being like a cell of a human body, or like a very low level of awareness. Like you just do your job. Like observe, report. I see that as another interesting like analogy or model for reality.
Yeah, it is. And I think there's a huge amount of importance to identity, only because the specialness, I use this a lot. The idea of being special is one of the main poisonous things that we can have here. And people always invert it. So like religious people will tell you like you're being blasphemous if you say you're God, or you're a part of God, or you're divine. And they're actually just inverting it. So what they're doing is they're saying what you actually are, which is divine, is something really special that actually you Ben, or you, Gary, you aren't worthy of that, at least not yet. Okay, you're being blasphemous because this thing is way too fucking special for you. See, you see how the term special, like, it really is poisonous. if you can say I'm divine and this here incarnation is simply one aspect of my multifaceted infinite being, you're not saying you're special. You're being practical, you're being pragmatic, and you're not like doing this thing which clutches and clenches and puts up walls, and I gotta lock up all these doorways now so I can hide all my trinkets and you can't have them. Like, that's what that does. The other method allows you to explore the whole thing without giving higher import to the Gary version than whatever other version I have running off in the cosmos. Like, it's not giving importance to one. It's appreciating all of it, really.
Yeah. I think that's honestly where all of our problems here stem from. Like, that's where the fear comes from, is the attachment to the image, and or the identity. Like,
right.
Man, it's kind of freaky sometimes. It's sad too. Like, you see older people, or you're just like, man, they really think that this is real. Like, they're just like fingernails, like holding on.
Yeah.
And you're like, and it's so, you can see that it's so painful for them. And you're just like, man, it's just like, you don't even have to do anything. You just have to let go. It's like you're hanging on to the bumper of a speeding car or some shit. You're like, it hurts, bing, bang, bang, wow. Like, just let go, man. Like,
exactly. Like they're worried about their bank account when they're like 89 years old and they're literally about to die. They're still like, how much money I got in there?
Yeah, they're 401k and the stock market. Like, dude, your clock's ticking here, man. Like, it's it didn't matter then, and it definitely doesn't matter now.
Exactly.
It's over. Yeah, my phone might die. I'm just letting you know. But
yeah, we can wrap up. This was a long one. I'm really glad to have you on, though. It's very rare that somebody comes on with a balanced. Anywhere, I'm talking about the entire enlightened community, truther community. Literally, there are very few balanced people, and you're pretty balanced. So I'm appreciative that you could come and share on the show.
I'm happy for you to have me, and yeah, I mean, it's really slim pickings nowadays, right? Like, just with just like stimulating conversation or content or whatever. It's just whittled down to like less than a handful of people on YouTube. That was really why I started making videos, because I just couldn't find the content I wanted to discuss anymore. Or like, I couldn't find, you know what I mean? I was like, damn, I guess I got to make these fucking videos.
It's like the corporate, the dead entity corporate whitewashing of Google search results or something. Me and Omar were talking about this the other day. Like, you put in a search result and it shows you a bunch of businesses and their interpretation of whatever that query was. And it's like, it's the most dry bullshit. Like, I think we're starting to see very clearly the distinction between the organic and then whatever the corporate sort of replication, because corporations replicate the organic. Technology replicates the organic. It tries to repeat and then hoard up those little bits that it made, and it calls it wealth. And it's not really wealth. It's just a pretend mechanistic way to pretend that you have power. Like, that's all that it is. It's nothing more than that. But people have fallen in love with they've fallen in love with the image, like everything the Bible said not to do, like no graven image before God. And that just means anything that is a part of God's creation is not God. Like, if you see any being yapping anything out of the mouth, that's not God. It's very simple. It's very super simple. Like, if I'm sitting here and talking, my name is Gary, whatever, I'm not God. Like, there is a thing that I am within that is what you could call God. It does not speak. It never speaks. It has never spoken. Yeah. So that's how you tell. If someone is speaking, then they are not, the whole. The whole doesn't speak. It speaks maybe through its parts, but then its parts might be compromised because it's a part. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. But it's weird. It's like I study the Bible. Like, I read the Bible like almost every day, and I find it extremely interesting, and valuable. And to be honest with you, I think it's true. I do believe the Bible's true, but I can't really ever find anyone to talk about like the Bible like the way I want to talk about it, because anyone who believes the Bible's true is locked into like a dogma. Like, no, there's rules. You can't just go thinking that. Like, you got to read it the way we told you to read it.
It's so silly.
I can't even call myself a Christian. Like, I would never call myself a Christian because, like, that's like why, like, that's like there's a bunch of dudes already who call themselves that, and they're waving a big flag, and they've been doing all kinds of heinous shit for as long as I'm aware of. So why would I? Yeah, like, we read the same book. So what? That doesn't, like, I like Dune too. Did you read Dune? Like, that doesn't mean like I have to fly your fucking flag and follow you around.
Dune is a much better Bible, dude.
Dude, that was my first Bible. Before I ever read the Bible, that was like my first like spiritual experience with a text, reading Dune.
It's amazing.
And only the first book is divinely inspired. Like, I like the other Frank Herbert books.
Yeah, me too.
Children of Dune and Dune Messiah. But there's something about that first book that I'm like, I really don't feel like this guy wrote this book. I feel like this just came like a download or something, and he just kind of spit it out like a printing machine.
It was very. There's a possibility to have worlds without the skewed, like, Messiah God, angry, righteous God entity running everything, and that book is an example of one of those possibilities.
Right.
And we're not privy to very many examples of those. We're just, for the most part, shown this one, like, mean God with a magnifying glass and an anthill. You know, like, that's all we're shown, and it just feels stupid. So when we see a Dune. Or whatever, even Harry Potter was a different world that didn't have that bullshit, you know.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're here to do also. Like, people like you and I are here to remind people that there's just simply another way to think about things. Even if nothing more than that, there's another way.
Yeah. And if it, this is like one of the last things I have to say, but if it looks really bad to you, like, what? Like, why is everyone in control bad guys? How come we only see bad, powerful people, but no good power? Like, where's all the good guys? Like, hello, McFly. Hello, that's you. That's what you're supposed to be doing, you fucking idiot. Like, yeah, that's you. You're the good guy. That's why you don't see the good guys, because you're not fucking doing anything.
Exactly. Anyway. And another thing to remember. Let's maybe end on this, but. Just remember, the system itself appropriates money appropriately, right? So in an inverted system, you can tell if you're a bad guy by how much money you have. You can tell if you're a good guy by how much money you have. It's just inverted. It's very simple. So, like, you got no money, you know, you're compassionate, that means you're powerful. You got lots of money, your brain must go down certain train tracks, that means you're a bad guy and you're not powerful. Very simple.
Yeah, people would love to argue that, but just straight data-wise, just look out there. That's exactly how it is. That's how it is. That's how it works. Like,
and also, also it's evident because, like, these types of channels, like mine and yours, like, it's clearly that algorithms don't favor them to, like, the Justin Bieber type retarded bullshit. Like, very obviously. I don't care. Like, it's what it is, but it's very obviously the realm doesn't want this type of sort of flow happening because it can't contain it within canals as easily, you know?
Nah, they don't like us, but there's not a whole lot they can do about it. So we just have to use our cleverness, our creativity. That's all.
Yep, creativity and everything. Anyway,
all right, Gary.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate you.
Thank you, dude. I really appreciate it. And that was awesome talking to you.
Yeah, come back on sometime, yeah?
Definitely.
All right.
I'll be watching later today.
Take care, brother.
Later, Gary.
Peace.